Welcome to this Tuesday reflection on the 23rd of June. Some years ago I was privileged to attend a course at Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Israel. The week's course was to look at the roots and history of anti-Semitism and how it's experienced today, and how we as Christian leaders could work to combat anti-Semitism in our own spheres of influence. Specifically, we looked at the Warsaw Ghetto and explored how whole communities, their life, their history, their cultures, were completely decimated as a result of the Second World War in only a matter of years. One photograph stood out in the museum, and I've carried it with me in my memory ever since. It was of a street scene with cars and buses going along, well-dressed men and women walking along the pavements, but with emaciated bodies lying around their feet, and them just walking on by. It was a shocking sight, and I found myself wondering how a society could get to a point where people were apparently behaving in such an inhumane manner, how people could walk by on the other side and seem completely to unnotice those who were lying on the streets around them. But I was brought up sharp when I returned to Manchester and found myself doing almost exactly the same thing. Walking by men and women, not corpses, but men and women lying on cardboard or in dirty sleeping bags in the alleyways and across shop doorways, just lying there, apparently with no hope. I learnt that they were homeless, and many of them were refugees or asylum seekers, but many of them also were UK citizens who, for no fault of their own in many cases, had lost their jobs or had to leave home because of domestic issues and ended up on the streets with nothing but what they were wearing. This week, the Today programme on Radio 4 has been listening to commentators talking about what they hope the world can become like as we move out of this pandemic. And the other morning, we heard an essay from Pope Francis, who, amongst other things, talked about the underground people, those people who have become invisible and voiceless, who have no power of themselves to help themselves. His hope was that as we come out of the pandemic, we will learn to pay attention to these people. They're easy to ignore. It's easy to see them as an inconvenience or just to overlook them. But his hope and prayer was that we learn to pay attention to them and to start to see them as human beings like you and I. Someone whose mother loved them and raised them. Someone whose loss of work or domestic situations has meant simply that they've lost their way. And all that they need is a bit of love and support to help them get back on their feet and put their lives together again. It's easy to feel paralysed when we look at the many needs that are apparent in our society, needs that are expected to grow exponentially as a result of this pandemic. And it's difficult to find solutions to long-standing and systemic issues in our society. Not many of us feel equipped to respond politically those signing petitions and writing to councillors and MPs can have more of an impact than I think a lot of people realise. But we can all take responsibility for our attitudes and our actions. Smiling at people, stopping to chat, buying coffee and sandwiches for those who we see homeless on our streets can make all the difference to someone and give them that glimmer of hope, that sense that they are human and there is something for them to live for. Our scriptures are full of references to the poor, to the widow, to the orphan, to the stranger. And one of the stories that I hold very close to my heart is Jesus' parable of the sheep and the goats, which outlines the very small steps, in fact, that are expected of those who follow Jesus. I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. Small steps that could make all the difference to those who are living on the streets of our cities and towns. So as we ease out of this lockdown, let's renew our resolve to pay attention and learn to love even the least of these in whatever ways we can.